Previously on agentpalmer.com, a promised playlist, Wired highlights an industry that failed John Belushi, which continues today. And just remember, Ed and I talk more sports than we talk Star Trek. This is the Palmer Files, episode 110, featuring NJ Sullivan, a co-founder of Lantern Audio Works, creator of audio dramas and the written arts, who is here to discuss a lot of things related to life and the art of creation. Are you ready? Let's do the show! And welcome to the Palmer Files. I'm your host, Jason Stershik, also known as Agent Palmer, and on this 110th episode is NJ Sullivan, the creative director and co-founder of Lantern Audio Works. During this episode, you will hear us discuss how the stories that become books and audio dramas come to be created by NJ, as well as processes we both share in our creation, ideation, and editing. We talk about realistic expectations, building community, being supportive, early influences, not having a destination, being sound engineers at a formative age, learning to edit physical books, and well, all of that plus a whole lot more is coming your way. But first, remember that if you want to discuss this episode as you listen or afterwards, you can find all related contact information for myself and NJ Sullivan in the show notes. There, you can find more information about my guest NJ Sullivan's work at lanternaudioworks.com. Don't forget, you can see all of my writings and rantings on agentpalmer.com, and of course, email can be sent to thepalmerfiles@gmail.com. So without further ado, let's get into it. NJ, you and I meet at a party, and I ask you what you do. And after the panic goes away, what's your answer?
I am NJ Sullivan. I am creative director and co-founder of Lantern Audio Works. I write and produce audio dramas, and I am also a 4-time best-selling author. Okay,
and I know you as a vlogger who is willing to put that stuff on the internet and on YouTube. Because there's a part of me that envies you a bit in that, because while we all have these platforms and you've got podcasts and writing and outlets and stuff, and I have this podcast and writing and outlets and stuff, you are personal in those vlogs in a way that's the stuff I write down, and it's one of the few things I write down that I don't share with everybody else.
Well, there's a philosophy behind that for the vlogs. It's kind of a twofold thing. One is those are kind of therapy for me.
Okay.
They're kind of like things I need to say out loud in a lot of ways. And, you know, some of the vlogs aren't that. Some of the vlogs are, this is a topic that's interesting to me. This is the random shit that came out of my brain this morning, and I want somebody other than my wife to have to listen to it.
Okay.
But also, the other side of the philosophy is I made a rule years ago when I started doing YouTube and streaming on Twitch and stuff like that, that I would not be a persona.
Okay.
That I wouldn't be a brand, that I'm a person. And even if that means saying, this is a really hard day, and these are the reasons. I know I'm going to get through it, but today is not easy. I'm tired, I'm sore, and I'm stressed out. And I'd rather have people see that than, you know, Instagram influencer, yo, to life is so great. Look at my vacation on the Riviera. That's a green screen. You know, like, I'm not that kind of person, and I never have been. I've come to be, I will say, very honest about the fact that I'm not always okay.
I appreciate the authenticity in a way that I think we all know when we're being lied to, even if that lie is just like, this is shiny and it's really not. But I think that over the last maybe decade, like, because I know there's people that think it's pandemic related, but I don't find this to be true. I think that the rise of alternative media in terms of influencers and YouTubers and people that can create content as a brand or an individual. They all get to make that conscious, and you and I are in that same boat. We get to make that conscious decision. Am I going, and look, I'm Agent Palmer because it's a great brand.
It is an awesome brand.
You will never be able to tell the difference between between the brand and me because there is no persona there. It's
almost more of a DBA.
Yeah, pretty much. That's basically the way I've been. But you and I both came to make those decisions. Yeah. And I think, at least for me, as a viewer, I like seeing authenticity because it makes me feel like I'm not alone in choosing to be real. And the other part about it is I like to consider myself a creative person, and I like to write, and I like to do this, and I'm going to keep talking about video on this a podcast until eventually I do start creating actual videos. But the point is, I'm a creative. What I am not is very creative. And in that, I mean, I couldn't do this if Agent Palmer was a persona. That's too much to remember. I don't know. I like peanut butter, but Agent Palmer doesn't. I cannot hold.
You can't act.
Yeah, I can't act, and you'd have to write the script for that persona, and that's I look at people where I can kind of tell that that's what's going on, and I'm just like, I don't know how you do it, and And
there's always like an uncanny valley thing about them too.
Yeah,
and part of it for me, I think, not having that persona. And, when the vlogs are one thing, but if I'm doing a live stream or something like that, I do perform somewhat because those things are meant to entertain. I put on a show, and I have a background from my youth. And when I say youth, I mean preteen, in music.
Okay.
And I've played in bands and I've played on stage. I was a punk musician, and I absolutely had a persona. I wasn't a different person than I am now, and I was probably a little bit more hyperactive back then. But on stage, I have, sitting around here somewhere, I think it's on a shelf, I have the Shure SM58 I used on stage. And I've recorded a lot of my shows that way as well. And it has a dent in it because I bounced it off a dude's head in the middle of a show. That is not my personality. I'm not a violent person. I'm not aggressive. I'm not loud, which, sorry for your editing, but, I'm relatively quiet spoken and soft spoken. I have my moments. Everybody does.
Yeah.
But I put on that performance, and then I realized I was going to have to put on that performance forever. You're never off stage.
Yeah.
You are never off stage. And I think that's what kills people. Honestly,
when I get in front of this microphone, I talk with a little more projection.
Yeah.
It's the only thing that changes. It's everything else is, if you and I were in a coffee shop right now, this would still be the conversation. And it's just the projection that changes because I know I'm being recorded, but it doesn't influence anything else. And I think that there's a part of me that I like. Look, there is a generation of us who are, I'm 40. I'm
44.
I have no problem acknowledging that, but there's a generation of us who, before it was cool, watched the reruns of Looney Tunes where Bugs would break the fourth wall. And so we've seen that since we were 3, right?
Yeah,
and I think that breaking of the fourth wall is something that you just come to eventually expect is always going to happen at some point. And so it's the example I always give, but my partner Stephanie and I started watching Minecraft videos kind of during the height of the pandemic when they kind of took off in a way, and it kind of burnt out a lot of those creators and they went away.
Yeah.
When they came back, a lot of them were honest about why they had left. And that
they dropped the act.
That breaking of the wall, I felt so... Look, here's the big secret for Agent Palmer. I just paced myself in such a way that one blog a week is fairly easy for me to pull off and work ahead. And 2 podcasts a month every other week is fairly easy to work ahead. When I hit the wall, I usually have a cache.
You got a few in the pot.
If nothing else, I almost always have a month to work with, so I can go through 3 weeks of just crap and not have it impact the schedule. All it does is, make it so I don't have as much to lay on, so to speak. But
right, you have to build it back up.
I like hearing I have problems. This is not easy, because I feel like it's a disservice to viewers and listeners and readers everywhere, because there's a chance, look, it's not ego when I say this, but there's a chance that every podcast, blog post, book, streamer, YouTuber, movie video, anyone, even the worst one you could possibly think of, is somebody's inspiration for for theirs.
Yeah, for the next thing that comes.
If you're putting on a face that you could just keep putting out every episode all the time and it's there's never a cloudy day, that will, when they get to their first cloudy day, if they've never heard that person talk about that's horrible.
And what you're saying is reminding me of one of my favorite YouTubers. He's a younger guy than us. He's in his early mid-30s. Jacksepticeye.
Okay.
He's an Irish YouTuber, and started out as straight up a Let's Player, only video games.
Okay.
And he was working 14 or 15 hours a day on them, and this is while he was in college.
So there's still a course load and classes.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
other things.
And he was releasing 2 videos a day, 7 days a week for 5 years.
Jeez.
5 years straight. And he got to the point where, and obviously, he became hugely successful. This is his full-time career and has been for over a decade. And he finally got to the point where he realized, this is going to kill me. I need to take a break. And he had a character, that he played. Well, not really a character. It was more like another side of his personality that was on camera, but It was the only side of his personality for the most part that was on camera.
Yeah.
With very few breaks in it. And he finally came out and said, I need to take time off. I need to stop. And there was, real loud, yelly, gravelly voice. And he just kind of dropped that. And he was like, listen, guys, I need at least 3 months away from this. I can't do this anymore. This is going to kill me. I do not feel well. My mental health is suffering. My physical health is suffering. I appreciate everything I've gotten. I appreciate all of you, but I need to stop. And seeing somebody who I had seen for those 5 years release 2 videos a day, every day, the sun is shining all the time, like you said.
Yeah.
Just completely drop the image and, piece to camera, just straight up, I cannot do this anymore. I don't know when I'm coming back. I don't know what the channel will be when I come back, but I need to be okay. And I'm just now learning that. And, it was kind of an inspiration to me to see that somebody who had built an entire career on being this loud, boisterous, aggressive, sweary Irishman, well, not really aggressive, but loud and kind of all over the place. He came back and people said, hey, look, he's back. And it just went like no time had passed. And he came back a little bit more subdued. He came back and he started doing other things than video games. He stopped doing 2 videos a day. And people were like, I wish you'd go back to the way you were. But that was like 2% of his total audience. Everybody else was like, we are glad you're okay.
Yeah.
And, that and a few other YouTubers that I watch who have done very similar things. It's, if you build a good community, you don't have to have an always on. You don't have to wear a mask. you draw people around you who appreciate you as the person you are, which can get dangerous because that leads into parasocial relationships. And, there's a dark side to that.
Yeah. But I will say that the other side to that is there is a parallel for what you create and who you are, not necessarily lining up, even if you don't.
Oh,
even
absolutely.
No matter how authentic you are, you say this one thing because, and I can't stress this enough, mainly because I am a fan of others, as are you.
Of course.
We all know other things better than we know ourselves. And so...
Yeah, for me, it's the works of Arthur Conan Doyle.
Yeah, for me right now, it's any number of authors whom I've just read a lot of. But it's like I know their work probably better than they do. And I'm sure people that listen to this show know some things I've said that I won't remember. Look, my blog comes out once a week, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, granted, it's been over a decade now, so it adds up. But there have been times when people were like, this is a great line. And I was like, who wrote it?
Yeah, I was about to say that. Awesome. Who wrote it?
Yeah, and it's like, you did. Like, I don't... Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That, and so there is that part of it where it's like, okay, we aren't necessarily our art.
No, I mean, and we should be in our art. We need to be in our creations. Otherwise, the robots win. But we can talk about that topic if you like.
Yeah, I think. Let's
let's pull the pin on that hand grenade while we're tap dancing on a landmine.
Yeah.
But we should be in it. But we're not the only ones in it.
Yeah.
Like, it's hilarious to me, or I don't know if hilarious is the right word, but I was interviewing a horror author.
Okay.
And I was telling her about an experimental audio drama I had done called Footsteps, which is in full immersive surround sound.
Okay.
Which is why it was experimental. I was actually just playing with it. And it was actually an adaptation of a story I wrote for the 6th grade Halloween horror storytelling contest where I won honorable mention. And I was so angry because 2 cheerleaders and a football player got the top 3 spots.
Oh.
But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I don't carry baggage. What?
None of us do. No, I still have the poem framed that got me, that changed my life in high school. But let's, we all have those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was telling her about this and kind of, because it's surround sound, the story is that you're sitting there in the brain of a hitman who's waiting for his target to get home. And he's sitting in the guy's study in the dark. And you hear the clock ticking, and you hear the front door open as this guy's giving a monologue about who this guy he's about to kill is. And you hear the door open, and you hear the door close, and you hear the guy come up the stairs, and you hear the guy walk toward the door to the room you're in, and you hear him open the door, and then you hear a gunshot, and you hear a body hit the floor. And the hitman says, everybody makes mistakes. And in the time, like while that's all happening, the clock is ticking in the background, the grandfather clock. And after the door to the study opens, the clock slows down. It goes from to. Because time slows down in that moment.
Yeah.
I've had a gun in my face. Trust me, time slows down. And I was telling her about it just because we were kind of talking about how audio can be used so effectively for horror because it's so visceral.
Yeah.
Like, we are attuned to sound.
Yeah, even if you're not like looking at the screen, you can still hear the footsteps.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's nothing scarier in the world to me than utter darkness. because in utter darkness, I can hear everything and nothing can distract me from it. But I told her about it and she goes, that's a horror story. You know that, right? I was like, I'm not a horror writer. What are you talking about? She goes, you should be. That's a horror story. That is terrifying. I was like, maybe I'll try it. And every once in a while, she messages me and asks me if I've started working on that horror series yet. I was like, not yet.
Well,
I'm on sabbatical.
So I want to go back for a moment because you said you wrote this, the beginning to this in the 6th grade. So,
yeah.
And obviously we've kind of glossed over it, but you've been creating basically ever since. Was that
since before?
Okay.
That.
So was that what you want? Like, did you want to be a writer, producer, creative artist? You know, I want to be as general as possible because I think we all choose different mediums, right? And kind of ebb and flow. I mean, I have a musical background too that we could probably do in a completely separate episode on. But like the point is, like, I have been in that world as well, and right now writing and I guess talking is my field. You know,
right,
so,
right.
But was that, but I will give you time to answer this question by telling you, I never had a destination. In fact, I still don't.
I didn't either.
Okay.
I knew I had a talent, and I've always been obsessed with two things: stories and sound.
They go well together. And
come to find out, as an adult, there's an absolutely solid reason for that, because I am adult diagnosed autistic. So sensory inputs have always been something that has been a big thing for me. And having a background in music, I've always been very interested in sound and how sound travels and the effect it has on people. And stories and the effect they have on people. It was kind of a way, looking back on it, for me to understand how other people thought, because it didn't make any sense to me.
Okay.
And, you know, I was a very early, I almost said early adopter. That's not the right phrase. I learned to read and write very, very young. I was maybe 3 years old.
Okay.
And by the time I was in the fifth or sixth grade, I had a college level reading proficiency. So I don't know, you know, that's not me bragging. It's just how I was. I was that kid.
But were you also, I mean, I guess the question would be, were you using it as well? Right? Like, I mean, at sixth grade is the first grade I'm reading Tolkien by myself, which I don't know if that counts, because it feels like that's a lot of people's gateways.
For me, oddly enough, I started out in maybe the 4th grade, like seriously reading, like seeking out books.
Okay.
Rather than just, you know, reading the stuff for school and, you know, the little kids' books. And it started out with with Sherlock Holmes and Edgar Allan Poe.
Okay.
Which led to my lifelong fascination with A, the Victorian era, and B, mysteries.
Yeah.
And
yeah, that would do that.
And that type of language.
Yeah.
And I'm a big proponent of getting rid of minimalism because those are the stories I grew up on. That kind of more expansive language.
I think that this is one of those things where memory is a horrible and a beautiful thing to waste, because I would love to have an example of this for you. But all I hear when you say that is that minimalism, in my opinion, is great only when it's in its place, which means, you know, the idea of one character, as an example, exposing a ton of verbiage to an entire room, to which the answer is from another character, yes. Right? I love the juxtaposition of this guy said 1,000 words, this guy said 1, and still somehow they're equal. But the idea that minimalism, for minimalism's sake, like, you and I are going to have a conversation, a back and forth, where it's just grunts and like, and we're going back to before language. That's where I have a problem with minimalism.
For me, I'll answer your original question, and then we can continue on with this. Or I'll finish answering it. I always loved stories, and I always loved audio dramas. We had them on. We had a vinyl record of a full cast production of an adaptation of the book adaptation of Star Wars.
Okay.
That's a long way to go to say we had Star Wars on vinyl.
Yep.
But with all the sound effects and stuff. And my parents would always quote The Shadow and The Lone Ranger, and we'd listen to them when they were available. And The War of the Worlds played every Halloween on one of our local radio stations. And I was fascinated by that. Like, all of that audio, all of the potential of that. But when I was a kid, that wasn't available. You couldn't do that. Yeah. Not at home. You needed to be the BBC to pull that stuff off.
Yeah.
And so I wrote books because I loved telling stories. And I wrote stories. And at one point I was in high school-ish. I had gone from handwriting stories, short stories, 1,000 words, 2,000 words, 5,000 words, to writing, getting home from school, doing my homework, going upstairs, getting on the computer, and being on the computer writing until 3 o'clock in the morning. So, 10 hours?
Yeah.
12 hours? To the point where I actually gave myself astigmatisms in both my eyes from staring into a CRT computer screen.
Do you still have that writing?
Maybe a little bit of it.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit of it.
I only ask because I've been trying to clean out the clutter of my house. And so I've been scanning a lot of old documents that were like, oh, this is just some random short story from like 8th grade me, right? Like, it's like, and I don't know what I'll do with it. I don't need a physical copy, but just that I have a digital copy now.
But it exists.
Good, it exists. And look, the angsty teenage years notebooks are still on a shelf, right? Like, haven't gotten rid of them. I also haven't cracked the spot. Like, I also haven't.
Yeah, you're not. You don't even want to look.
I don't know. There's a part of me. I don't know if I want to look or not. But like, I understand where you're coming from with all these outside influences. The one that I didn't realize was an influence until my senior year in college, when it came time to choose a project to graduate with, I chose a 1-hour radio drama.
Oh,
this is 2003 when I made the decision. Podcasting exists, but not really.
Yeah, it only existed for like a year at that point.
And I don't even know about it at that point. So I needed to come up with an influence because I had it was one of those, when we talk about not having a destination, it was one of those, I have this text that could be the basis for an audio thing because I don't want to just turn it in as text. And so I can use this as the basis. And so I needed to come up with sources because that's and cite references and all that kind of stuff. And so the one that came to mind, which honestly existed beforehand, was Garrison Keillor's A Prairie Home Companion.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I listened to it all the time growing up.
Which my parents, that was a road trip staple, basically.
Yep.
You're going to be in a car for more than a few hours. Let's throw on the tapes, right? And
that and Paul Harvey.
We didn't do Paul Harvey, though.
Yeah, Paul Harvey was on the radio where I grew up, AM radio. And so in hindsight, it all makes sense. And now I'm here on the microphone doing that but like, and I've since kind of revisited a bunch of that stuff, and it all makes sense to me how I hear things. And like when I'm behind the scenes of even nonfiction, like how I put stories together, like it all kind of makes sense now. Yeah, it's kind of like, I mean, you also have a musical background. It's an ear you developed.
Yeah.
And that kind of informed as your instincts developed, it kind of funneled into this almost like a worldview.
Yeah, it's like it's kind of like this is how it all makes sense. And look, I understand that it makes sense to me, and some people will like it and some people will hate it, but like it is that kind of like, well, if you do these things for long enough, like if you listen to this stuff for long, if you play a guitar, even if you don't have any lessons, eventually you will get good enough to play something. Some people are going to like that and some people aren't, right? Like that's just the way the world works. But like I've dabbled in all of these other kinds of projects, and it's just, as a consumer of media, I feel like it always is something that you're just learning from. And like I have friends that are like, I want to write a book, or I'm thinking about writing a book, and this, that, and the other thing. And you know, look, I'm a creative person. I'm surrounded by people that are three kinds of people, really. Those that have no interest in creating anything, those that are actually creatives, and those that have very little interest but don't realize they want to create something and are like, yeah, I have ideas, but yeah. And so I'm always that guy that's like, I read this book. I think if you read this book, you'll come out with a new format with which to maybe tell your story. Or, you know, this is the most recent example is a friend of mine is a mommy blogger, and it just occurred to me, like I read Danny Trejo's book, Trejo's Tacos a while ago, but like it was on my shelf and I was like, she needs to look at this book because he's telling his life story and throwing in a recipe.
He's got a hell of a life story too.
But he's also throwing in recipes. So it's a cookbook / memoir. And I was like, this might be the best format for you. And I'm always doing this. This is my current place in a world where I am just freelancing for my life, underemployed, but telling any creative I could possibly run into, like, I think I know how you can do that.
I think, and it's interesting that you say that because that actually sparks something in my head. Whenever I'm talking to people who are either just starting out or the same level as me, sometimes, you know, more advanced or more experienced, they'll say, oh, I have this idea and I was kind of thinking of doing it this way. And I'll immediately have 10 or 15 things that, well, you know, these are branches of that tree that you could go down and you've got all these, all this potential in that. And I've started to realize that the reason I think that way is because when I was young and recording music, because, you know, all my recording knowledge comes from using borrowed equipment in somebody's basement, the kind of borrowed that you wear gloves just in case somebody wants it back.
Okay.
In a lot of cases, not all the time, but it happened. And recording for other people because I had really good ears.
Okay.
You know, being the sound engineer, even though I had no training in it, I was like 17, 18 years old at the time.
I was just I was at that time, I was the one who bought the Porta Studio. Right. So
I've got one to my left.
It was in, you know, it was in my house. I learned how to be an engineer, like a sound engineer, basically. But you know, yeah, you have, look, when it all starts, if you're the guy sitting there, you're
the one who pushes the button.
Yep. That, like, and if I was if it wasn't mine, or if you weren't sitting in that spot, somebody else would have done it. But for some reason, that was the place we were put, and now this is where we are.
Well, and I think that kind of like ability to come up with all those different ideas and push things in other people's ideas in different directions comes from the level of problem solving you have to do. When you're recording in somebody's mom's basement and the amp is making too much noise, or how do I get rid of the sound of somebody walking around upstairs? How do I kill the echo on this mic? And having no training and just having to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite for all of those is I have 3 Radio Shack mics, one good mic with an XLR cable. Good. It's just any mic with an XLR cable at that point, because the Radio Shack ones were 1/4 inch. And it was like, okay, how do I record drums? Like, it's it's just like, okay, I mean, like, I have more than enough mics, but what do I do? And it's just like, okay, time to just you're gonna figure it out, right? And luckily in those days we were using cassette tapes, and they were a dime a dozen, and it was like, all right, well, if this doesn't work, I can either erase it or I could just go to the next one. And it was just like, how do you do this? Because it was in a house and it wasn't a residential, so you're not recording past 8, maybe 9 if you're lucky on a weekend, or 10. And it's like you know, there was always somebody who was like, why don't we go into the garage? It's like, no, because the acoustics are better in the basement. And it's just,
concrete walls, man.
How do you figure this out? And, you know, we had 2 mic stands. So now it's not just about how are we miking it. It's like, okay, but we're not going to waste a mic stand on the bass drum. So we'll put it in between 2 books and try and get it at the right height.
Oh, man. Those were the days.
There's an amount of that kind of, like, just early on problem solving that now when I get into any situation, I'm thinking of all the alternatives. And I had a professional career in nonprofit marketing, which was a great extension from all that, because it's like, how can I do this with no money? Which
you just reminded me of a quote. That what you just said reminded me of a quote. And because I'm a quality stickler, like, on myself. I don't hold other people to the same standard I hold myself to.
None of us do.
But I want my raw mic sound to be perfect, because the more perfect that sound is, my voice or whoever's voice going into that sound, the more I can do with it later.
Yep.
If I need to add a room reverb or, you know, an echo effect or bounce it around in the stereo space, it's easier to do with a completely clean signal. And I've met people, and I'm not naming names here because I am not that guy. I throw no one under the bus but myself. But I've met people who are professionals who have full studios with Dolby Atmos built in, and, you know, this $10,000 per episode budgets for audio dramas, and they're still saying good enough. And when you listen to it, you can hear it.
Yeah.
And my wife and I are big fans of a guy named Watsky. I don't know if you've heard of him.
I haven't.
He's a rapper out of LA, and he is a nerdy white boy.
Okay.
And a lot of his stuff is actually pretty inspirational. It's kind of like, I won't say nerdy white boy, I'll say suburban white boy.
Okay.
And because he doesn't do a lot of, like, nerd rap stuff. Like, he's not a nerdcore guy or anything like that. But he talks about stuff that is the kind of stuff I grew up with. And even though he's probably 15 years younger than me, but God, that's a weird feeling. But he has a song called Cardboard Castles. And it's about, you know, holding on to the dream. I'm in my room building cardboard castles. And the first 2 lines of the song are, because if we don't do it, who will? I do things on a shoestring that you couldn't do for a cool mill.
Yeah.
And whenever I start getting down about the fact that, you know, I record in a closet, you know, up until very recently, I recorded everything on that 30-year-old Shure SM58 mic. Not a studio mic, a stage mic, and an old stage mic that has never had the diaphragm replaced. Like, the paint is cracking on it. And if you've ever held an SM58, it ain't painted, it's powder coated.
Yeah.
This mic has been held so much and has had so much, like, hand acid on it that the powder coat is actually bubbling now. Like, if you ever take the cover off that type of mic, like an SM58, that dynamic stage mic type mic, inside the windscreen, there's a chunk of foam. shape to it, and it acts as a little bit of a windbreak and like a pop guard.
Yeah.
When my wife started doing her podcast, I bought her an SM58, not to use necessarily, but because I think every vocal performer, blah, 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 I talk for a living, should have an SM58. It's like a rite of passage to me, because I grew up in the stage world, and when you had your own mic, you were big time.
Yeah.
And so I bought her one, and I was kind of looking at the differences, how like dirty mine was, and I didn't realize it. And, you know, the fact that the grill itself is darker because of oxidation. And I was like, I wonder if they're different on the inside. And I took the two windscreens off, and the foam in hers is white. Brand new. It's white.
Did you even have foam?
Oh, no, there was foam.
Okay.
It looked like... I'm trying to think of the grossest way I can describe this. Oh, wow. What is a good name for this color? Nicotine stained brown.
Okay.
Not even yellow.
Yeah.
Brown. Because I used to be a smoker. And I would smoke on stage, and I would smoke when I was recording. As you couldn't tell by my voice, I used to be a smoker. I also used to be a tenor. But, and I was just looking at it, I was like, holy crap. But anyway, getting back to my actual point, I didn't warn you about the rabbit trails.
No, that's what natural conversation is, right? Like, and I'm all right with it. I did want to say though, like, there is a point of pride on an independent level that allows people like us to do a little bit more with a lot less. And I don't want to
you're absolutely right.
I don't want to call people that get the contract and have the money lazy.
Oh,
but I
wish I did.
But I
wish I had that stuff.
I mean, I do wish I had that stuff, but I also think there is an assumption. and so it's kind of the great equalizer of like, oh, because early on, I spent a lot of time making sure this sounded as professional as possible, despite the fact that early on, I was a mediocre host at best, because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. But like, I wanted it to sound good despite all of that. And, you know, the compliments I would get were the only compliments I think that mattered at that time, and probably now, which is people would listen for 5 minutes. No, you know, the friends of a friends and the colleagues, they never listen for more than 5 minutes, but they would always say, it sounds so professional. Gee, thanks. That's great for one mic in an office that I'm lucky enough in my house to have carpet on the floor instead of hardwood. So it just balances everything out. And like, I was using different software at the time. And so like, it's kind of like, what can you do with how little, and how can you make it sound?
And it's not even, I think we're kind of on the same page. It's not even like I am going to limit what I can use. It's, this is what is available to me.
Yep.
And now it's time to start thinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cause like, I do a show called Brimstone. The first season of it's out. And on that show, for the first season, it started out as an experiment just to see if I could do it.
That's a good way to start.
The first episode is like 2.5 minutes long. And I don't think anyone's in the first season hit 10 minutes. But I recorded that through the SM58, and there's multiple characters, a narrator, a main character, and I did every single voice because I didn't realize you could hire voice actors.
I mean, in the podcasting world, you can just ask other people. I mean, so
exactly.
There's also that too now.
Now I'm part of a group on Facebook where I told people, hey, I might have this thing coming up, and they're like, hey, let me know, I'll do it for free. And these are people who've worked for the BBC.
Yeah.
And they're like, if I've got nothing in my schedule that week, man, I'll take it for the credit. Like, where were you 2 years ago? Oh, right. I wasn't on Facebook.
Yeah.
Because I'm too cool for that. And it's like, I look at it kind of as a budget. If you have a lot of money, you don't need a lot of time or a lot of thought. If you have a lot of time, you don't need a lot of thought or a lot of money. If you have a lot of thought, you don't need a lot of time or money.
I will stop you because
it's good to have all three.
I was going to say,
don't get me wrong.
Well, that's not why I was going to say. I was going to say I will stop you because when I have a lot of thoughts, I need more time. Like, money's never in the equation,
is a better word.
I always have that. What about this? What about that? And for me,
thought is the wrong word. Let me correct myself. Ingenuity.
Well, that's the thing, right? Because
Ingenuity.
it's the thought that goes, here's three. Well, and for especially independents where there is no money
budget
and time is still finite in a way.
Right.
It's a problem where you sit down and you go, I have 3 ways to do this. I can only invest in one.
See,
sometimes we get lucky and we can invest in all 3, but like in my experience, you really get to do one and then hopefully it works out. And if not, you go the other way.
See, for me, I think of what do I want to achieve?
Okay.
Like, say, creating Foley, creating a sound effect. Now, I prefer to use sound effects that I created.
Okay.
It fixes a lot of problems, especially with rights issues and all that stuff. And also, I enjoy the process of doing Foley. It's fun. And it's like making music in a weird way, like making a Tom Waits album.
Yeah. I mean, there's no, I have no.
But, say I want this specific sound and I can hear it in my head. Well, how do I make that sound? What will make that sound? Or what will get me close? And I can't go out and rent a Foley booth. I have a budget of $0. I go back to the way they did things for the first Star Wars. They needed a sound for the blaster. So what did they do? They went out to a tower, held a mic up to one of the guy wires, and smacked it with a hammer.
Yeah.
And that's the sound of a blaster. Run it through a filter or two. Well, they knew what sound they wanted. Then they found the thing that made that sound. Or got them close enough that they could work it.
Yeah, this is why I haven't really done anything other than what I'll call talkies as far as podcasting. And look, it's not like I don't have ideas. I think that there's a part of my brain as a creative that shuts off some of those ideas from really forming because I'm not there yet. You know what I mean? I think my brain goes, that's a good idea, and immediately tries to self-correct and goes, that could be a short story. Because I don't have any of the other, what I'll call environmental factors in order to make it anything other than me just saying the story, which is not necessarily what I want the end product to be. And so I'm still trying to write everything down because eventually I can revisit some of this stuff, and I'm trying to organize so that it's even possible to revisit some of this stuff, which I think is probably the biggest problem for all creatives is like, even if you write everything down, you have to be able to find it later.
Yep. I actually barely ever write anything down anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I write nearly nothing down. That's because for Christmas last year, my wife bought me a dictaphone.
Okay, but that's kind of the same.
I know.
Like you're still saving the ideas, I guess.
Saving the ideas.
Yeah. Because but here's the question. That to me, that feels worse for organization.
Well, I put it into Dragon Naturally Speaking, which I bought when I had more money.
Okay, so
that is a super expensive program.
So that'll turn it to text. So
turn it into a text.
Okay. All right.
And that way I can save it. I can even print them out. But it means there's 2 reasons for it. One is I think best when I'm walking.
Okay.
I'm one of those annoying people who paces when they talk on the phone.
Okay, well, I'm annoying with you. I didn't know that was annoying, but I can't sit still if I'm really talking and we get in a great conversation, like outside of this podcast where I'm constrained by a microphone and a headphones, I would, if this was a phone call,
we'd both be walking back and forth in the offices.
All over my house, not even my, and if it was not dark outside, I'd probably be pacing around the neighborhood too.
Yeah. I do the same thing. And for me, having the dictaphone,
okay,
which I named Ollie because I name everything because I'm that guy too. It's an Olympus, so I named it Ollie.
That works.
It means if I'm walking around, I don't have to stop, pull out a notebook.
Okay.
It also means I have pretty bad hands. They don't look it, but I have pre-arthritis in basically every knuckle in both of my hands because of a misspent youth. So I can only type for about 15 or 20 minutes.
Okay.
And then that's it, most likely for the day.
Is writing the same way, basically? Like actually writing? Okay.
Yeah. Well, writing is a little bit easier because the hand position is more natural.
Okay.
But even that, I can't do for super long. And not at any great speed.
Yeah, you basically saved yourself from doing what I had to do about 3 months ago was the last time this really happened. I was in the middle of a run and I had an idea, but I didn't want to stop my run because like I try to be pretty good with that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So for a mile and a half on my way back home,
you were saying it out loud to yourself. I was
saying the thing in my head over and over again. And when I finally finished, did I get a bottle of water like I should have? No,
you ran straight.
I pulled out my phone and I just started typing it in because while that's like my least favorite way of putting things down, I was like, I need to stop repeating this like it's a mantra because it's not. It's just a good idea, not a lifestyle choice. So like, let's just get this out and move on.
And it's a great thing because I still use notebooks a whole lot because I'm a plotter.
Okay. Yeah.
And I will handwrite plots. To me, that makes more sense. I've been told that other people do this. Apparently David Lynch does this. I found out recently, which made me feel very special. David Lynch stole my idea 10 years before I was born, I guess. But I write out my plot and then I take I make a detailed plot and I take each part of that plot and make scenes.
Okay.
Scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, scene 4, etc. And I write them all on 4x5 note cards with every detail, in some cases, including what people, actual lines of dialogue that I definitely want in there. And those note cards are the story Bible.
Yeah, this has been the bane of my existence because I don't quite do it that way, but I am a guy who used to print out stuff.
Yeah.
Put it on the bed, move it around, and you print out like, for me, and I haven't done any big projects like this in a while, but it's basically like I am printing out maybe a paragraph on each 8.5 by 11 sheet, which some people are going to be like, that's a waste of paper, but it's not. It's so I can write what I'm thinking while I'm rearranging it on the bed.
Right, you can make notes on the paper.
Yeah, and so it's kind of like, that's just the gist of this piece here. Let's move it around. There is no digital equivalent, really.
No, and that bugs me. I've looked for digital note card things that would go on my computer that I could move around, and
I know somebody's out there yelling like, "Oh, you should use Trello." It's not
StoryForge. Is another one.
None of these things are the equivalent. Like, it's kind of the same as saying like a Kindle and a book. Yeah, they're the same, but they're not. A Kindle will never truly replace a book. Like, it's just not. And so there's that.
I have a Kindle. I've never read anything on it.
Yeah, I mean, I've read stuff on it, but there's something about the tactile nature, and especially as creatives, whether it is for a book or a blog post or a podcast, even just holding on to the script. I'm holding up my notes right now because I still take notes, right? Like, there's something tactile that is important to the creative process.
I mean, my note cards and my notebooks.
Yeah.
They are essential for my mental health. And the thing is, using the dictation thing, another thing just to get back, but you're absolutely right about the tactile thing.
Yeah.
It is And there's like, I don't know. I'll finish my thought, and then I have another thought that kind of bounces off what you were just saying about books.
Yeah.
Using dictation, because I have hand pain, and when I was typing, at one point I set myself a goal of writing. This is back 2017, 2018.
Yep.
I was not in a good place in my life at all, and didn't realize I wasn't.
Oh.
And didn't realize that I have a weird kind of self-destructive edge to me, a need to push when I'm in bad spaces like that. And the way I decided to push was I set myself a goal of conceptualizing, writing, editing, and publishing a novelette a week. So that's about 12 to 15,000 words.
Yeah.
Every week. And this is before I started using dictation. And I pulled it off for 6 weeks. So I don't know. I can't do math.
It's a lot.
Roughly 15,000 words,
Yeah.
6 stories, 15 times 6, 15 times 2 is... Anyway, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. And that's when my hands started to hurt. Now, using dictation to write, which I do almost exclusively at this point, not only can I write literally anywhere I am if I don't care if people think I look insane talking into my hand.
No different than anybody talking on earbuds you can't see. So
I live in Denver. I am the least insane looking person walking down the street most of the time. But not only can I write anywhere without having to pull out a laptop or a notebook or any of that, I also speak at generally, on average, about 120 words a minute. At my fastest, I could type 75.
Yeah.
120 words a minute for 10 minutes straight is a short story.
Yep.
Now, round that up to 20 minutes because you're going to have starts and stops and you have to breathe and things like that. Unimportant stuff like breathing.
Yeah.
And you could write a short story in 20 minutes, technically.
Yeah.
And obviously there's going to be a lot of editing because dictation software is not perfect.
No, it's not.
It gets fairly close, especially something like Dragon that it trains on the way you talk. It gets fairly close, but when you're writing something that has a lot of odd names, something like fantasy or science fiction, there's a lot of replace all involved there.
Wait. What's this chapstick in here? I didn't say chapstick. Yeah.
Or if you're like me and when you screw up, you swear.
Oh, that
you wouldn't believe how many fucks I've had to remove from documents. Ah, fuck. And what's funny is because I have a Buffalo accent, especially when I'm speaking fast, it's not okay. I asked you before we started how much should I swear, and I'm like, I'm going to try and keep it to a minimum. And now I'm actually doing a dissertation on the word fuck.
Yeah.
But because of the way I talk, it comes out as fuck, which often gets split into fukin.
Ah, okay.
Or forkin, FOR space KIN.
That makes it even worse because that means that you've got
then I have
so
to go
much
digging through it.
Replace, yeah. All right.
I'm trying to figure out how to do phrase searches to make that easier. But being able to work that fast, and yes, there is a lot of editing involved. And I was kind of like, well, is that cheating? Is it this? Is it that? And then I found out that Brandon Sanderson has written damn near every one of his books that way.
Yeah.
He goes on hikes and tells a story into a dictaphone or his phone. And that's how he writes massive tomes in such a short period of time. And they're not bad books. It's not like the quality goes down.
Everybody should learn to edit though, which is a whole different...
Editing is...
Yeah, that's a different that's a different episode, but like...
It's a skill set entirely of its own.
Yeah, that's
true. It's like the difference between being a musician and being a sound engineer.
Yeah.
Really.
I mean...
Or a record producer.
Yeah. So what were you going to say about books though?
What was I going to say about books? Oh, right. Yeah. I've noticed that, and maybe I'm just noticing it because of social media and my involvement in it these days, which is both a boon and a bane of my existence. But also, I have noticed that there's almost a fetishization of the physical book. Like,
yeah, but for all the wrong reasons. Like, you've noticed it, but you've noticed it because there's a lot of people who like to
make buying books their personality online.
Well, it's also it's the people that buy vinyl without actually owning a record player. Like, that's the same kind of person. Look, I'm
book collecting, not
book reading.
Book reading.
Yeah.
And that, you know, it's fine. I have an admittedly small collection of antique books. I appreciate them for what they are, for the craftsmanship that went into them. I have an early 20th century, 1909-ish edition of the collected works of Sherlock Holmes that my wife bought me.
But you're a fan and you've read them, like in other forms, though.
Yeah.
So there's a difference as opposed to just, hey, look,
owning them
book.
to own them.
Yeah.
And I will never, and this is a very pragmatic thing, and it's fine if people live their lives other ways than me. I don't care. But I personally have never understood the I need to keep every book I've ever read mentality. Like,
I'm working through it right now. I'm trying to get rid of some because it's like there's a finite amount of space.
Well, I've often wondered if to a degree some of it is a form of hoarding. And I'm not calling you a hoarder, by the way.
No.
But
so for me, I want to downsize, but it's also about finite space. I can't physically put any more bookcases in my house. In order to read more books, I need to have a home for them, and I don't want to
see.
You need to get rid of some. At some point, it becomes a zero-sum game, and you have
yes, it does.
These are all the books you have, and if you want to get more, you have to get rid of some. But for me, it's just kind of like it took me a while to get here, but like I don't reread a lot of stuff.
No,
so it's like, what if I'm not going to reread
don't.
Time to go, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just all right. That's fair. I also think it's like, why am I holding on to this? But yeah, I think that there is a valid point. Plus, like, I have a friend who's been on this show, who's a book collector that doesn't really collect books. He collects rare books and signatures, but for the most part, when he reads a book, he passes it
on.
He only has his collectibles, basically. Everything else, he'll read and pass it on. And there's a part
like
of me,
that's almost like an antique collector.
Yeah, but there's a part of me
it's
that
kind of a
believes
different mindset.
that you should always pass it on. You know,
like, I've seen people, and not people I know, but people I've seen online who have storage units
no.
full of books that they read once, but they can't bring themselves to get rid of. And I'm sitting here going, and also weirdly, I'm a huge advocate. I mean, obviously, I'm a huge advocate for the democratization of knowledge.
I think
that,
I
don't believe in banning books. I don't believe in banning art of any kind. Do I believe in age restrictions? Yes. I should not have been allowed to watch Nightmare on Elm Street when I was 7 years old. You know,
everybody's got that one.
Everybody's got that one. Freddy Krueger was that one for me, man. And I think I was about 7 when that came out, but I was like elementary school age. But, you know, I'm a firm believer in that. I am also a firm believer that if you're not using it, somebody else could. When I moved I lived in Louisiana for 10 years. I moved to Denver from there. When I moved, I donated 12 Rubbermaid moving tubs of books to local schools and libraries. Didn't sell a damn one of them. I think I gave away 5,000 books and kept like 200. And most of those I've given away now too.
In a word, would you say you are at any point sad that you don't have This is not an individual question. This is just a general, like, are you sad you don't have those 5,000 books right now?
No, not even a little bit.
Yeah,
because other people have them. Did I enjoy all of them? Most likely. Yeah. But you know what? I can go to the damn library and enjoy them again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm supporting, the library.
Yeah.
I love libraries. One of the podcasts we recently paused.
Punks in the library.
Punks in the library. Yeah. Because that's what we are. We're the weirdos who are a little too loud and dress kind of funny and maybe swear too much. But we're also in the library. So...
Sometimes a conversation on this podcast is just so full and rich of topics and tangents that it's hard to form some sort of cohesive thought process to end the show. That's good. These are the kinds of conversations I want to have more of. We spoke about ourselves and our journeys, where we come from and what we've done, and how we've arrived through things, and all with a certain bent towards creative pursuits. The common factor being that creative pursuits are rarely easy, but they do end up being extremely fulfilling. So perhaps that's just how the old cliche is meant to be. And let us not forget the most important thing about this conversation. It made a connection between myself and NJ. One that between creatives is important, because while we're all individuals, we're also all uniquely different, which enables us to better help each other. It's a unique paradigm I'm happy to exist in with my fellow creatives. Thanks for listening to The Palmer Files, episode 110. And now for the official business. The Palmer Files releases every 2 weeks on Tuesdays. If you're still listening, I encourage you to join the discussion. You can find all related ways to contact myself and my guest, NJ Sullivan, in the show notes. There you can find links to my guest, NJ Sullivan's work at lanternaudioworks.com, which is the home for all Lantern Audio Works productions. The music for this episode was provided by Henno Heitur. Email can be sent to this show at thepalmerfiles@gmail.com. And remember, your home for all things Agent Palmer is agentpalmer.com. All right, NJ, do you have one final question for me?
I absolutely do, and I'm going to drop into this voice for it.
Okay.
So that your listeners can hear what I sound like. If you had the opportunity to have dinner with one rock singer, specifically singer, living or dead, who would you choose?
I'm immediately torn. I'm not torn. So the thought process is I'm immediately torn between the two big ones for me early on, which would have been Steven Tyler and Axl Rose.
Okay.
However, then I had an epiphany in the middle of thinking about choosing between those two. And I went, wait a minute, Bob Dylan could still be considered a rock singer.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm going to go with Bob Dylan final answer.
Oh, nice. That is good. That is honestly a good answer. I think it's better than mine.
Yeah, I've been... So I don't know what I'm going to do with this. But I have been listening through all of Taylor Swift's discography. Because I know the media personality, but I had never listened to her music. And occasionally, as I've been listening to albums and making notes, because I'll do something with this experiment.
We're creators. We always end up with more information in our heads than we can use.
So I don't know what's going to come of it. And right now, I'm just texting back and forth with a friend of mine who's a Swiftie. But and I'm not even into like I just finished, as we record this, I just finished, I think 1989 was the last, so I have a few more albums to go before I even get to the Taylor's versions of things and stuff. Like I get that. But I've also decided that because I was so excited about Angry, the new Stones single, and because I've been listening to a lot of like Dylan radio on Spotify, I've decided I'm going to also go back and listen to some discographies of the Stones and Dylan, because there's parts of those back catalogs that I don't really like. I know, but I don't really know. And the other thing, and I think this is the most important part, when I listen to a Taylor Swift album, because I've never heard it before, that's what I'm doing.
Right.
I'm sitting down with headphones, earbuds, whatever, and I'm listening to an album, and maybe I'll take notes. I'm not also doing this, I'm sitting down and I'm listening, and I want to do the same thing with Dylan and the Stones, which, by the way, will take me a long time. I'm not doing this every day. Man. Like, it's whatever. But like, I just feel like there's a lot there. And I'm always a sucker for like, well, there's got to be something that's not popular that I'll like. And, I there's a part of me that just, I still miss the album. And so
I agree.
It's not even.
We were like one of the last generations who had that as the main source, and the actual A-side, B-side type of record. Even
CDs, because early on, at best, you would get a 3-disc changer. Right. Oh, yeah. But it was 30 seconds between songs if you shuffled between discs. So it's just like hit play. That's fine. And we were the last generation that had it fairly easy, where it was like, I'll borrow that CD from Steve and put it on my mixtape. And so you could kind of make mixtapes a little bit pre-Napster. Like, that was what you did. You're like, does anybody have this album? Because I want this song on this thing. Yeah.
Or you listened to the radio and waited for it to come on and recorded it onto tape.
But in the circle I was in, I always knew somebody had owned. And look, we were also the give Columbia House a bad thing and get 10 CDs for a penny and then have it not lapse or whatever. Okay. The things we whatever. But the point is, I think it's Bob Dylan. I am okay not even asking a question. I'm cool just eating with him and listening to him talk. I know we recently lost as we record this, Robbie Robertson. So like the band, which is huge in my kind of musical background, like that's just to hear stories. And since Dylan's still alive, and to know the other thing is, I love the idea that Dylan was projected as an inspiration for a generation, despite the fact that that's not what he aspired to, which makes
he didn't care about it.
Which makes him...
He wasn't interested.
No, he wasn't, which makes him very different from all of the people now who are aspiring to that to some degree.
Yeah.
And so just the man's got stories for days. He put out, 2 years ago, he put out a 20-minute single, right? Which is basically just him telling stories.
And the thing is, because he's Bob Dylan, he can say fuck you and put out a 20-minute single.
Yeah. So
dude has a Nobel Prize.
Yeah. It's like, I don't think there's anybody else really.
It's interesting. That's honestly a really good choice, and probably way better than mine.
Who was yours?
Prince.
I mean, that's pretty good though too.
Incredible songwriter. From everything I understand, just as weird as he seemed, but also a nice guy.
Yeah.
And one of the best modern guitar players ever.
And you know what? Surprisingly humble about the guitar skill.
Yeah.
Look, he wasn't really a humble guy necessarily.
Not by a long shot.
But when it came to guitar, he was amazing, and he never was like, look at me, I'm better than Eddie. Like, that's just not...
It wasn't how he rolled.
Yeah.
And if you ever get the chance, look up... I don't know what it's from, but it's While My Guitar Gently Weeps, and it's Steve Winwood, Tom Petty, a few other musicians, and then
I've heard this
Prince comes on for the solo.
Yeah.
I have played that solo when I need to be inspired that you don't have to like fit into the mold to have the style.
Oh, see,
Prince
now
walks
Tom
out
Petty,
there.
Now I'm thinking about Tom Petty. Still sticking
Tom
with
Petty's
Bob
another
Dylan.
one.
But now I'm thinking about Tom Petty.
Well, you could always ask Bob Dylan about Tom Petty. It's not like they didn't work together, you know? And we wouldn't have to resurrect Bob Dylan. He's still around.
Yeah.
And you could drink his whiskey.
Yeah.
He's got his own label. Heaven's Door Whiskey.